Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and sometimes heartbreaking chapters in automotive history. 10 absolutely stunning cars that looked like a dream, but failed miserably in the 1970s. These weren't just cars. They were style icons, bold experiments, and engineering dreams on wheels. But for all their beauty, many couldn't survive the harsh realities of the market, the oil crisis, or their own flaws. So buckle up, because some of these stories will make you wonder, how could something so gorgeous go so wrong? Before we hit the road, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and ring that bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into automotive history. All right, let's get started. Number 10. 1977 DeLorean DMC-12. If there is a car that became a legend not because of its success, but because of its failure, it is, without a doubt, the DeLorean DMC-12. John DeLorean, a former top manager at General Motors, wanted to build a car that would become a symbol of innovation and style. The concept appeared in 1977, and serial production began in 1981. The main features were gull-wing doors and an unpainted stainless steel body. The car looked like a futuristic sports car, especially by the standards of the late 70s. But behind the spectacular design, there were serious problems. First, the engine. Despite the supercar appearance, under the hood was a weak 2.85-liter V6 from Peugeot Renault Volvo, producing only about 130 horsepower. Acceleration to 100 kilometers per hour took almost 10 seconds. This disappointed buyers who expected the dynamics of a Ferrari or Porsche. Secondly, the build quality. Since production was carried out at a new plant in Northern Ireland and the team had no experience in mass production, the DMC-12 suffered from poor fit of parts, unreliable electronics, and problems with tightness. And finally, the price. For this money, buyers could get proven and fast sports cars of famous brands. As a result, the DMC-12 sold poorly and the company itself went bankrupt by 1982. Paradoxically, the car received real fame after the death of the brand, thanks to the film Back to the Future, which made it a cult classic. But in fact, in the late 70s, early 80s, it was one of the brightest and loudest failures of the auto industry. Number 9. 1974 Bricklin SV1. When you hear the phrase sports car of the 70s, you probably imagine something wild, loud, and dangerous. But Canadian entrepreneur Malcolm Bricklin decided to challenge the stereotype. His dream was simple: to create a sports car that would put safety first. And so the Bricklin SV1 was born, an abbreviation for Safety Vehicle 1. Sounds promising, right? On paper, it all looked like a revolution. An acrylic plastic body, a fiberglass upper, built-in bumpers that could withstand an impact at speeds up to 8 kilometers per hour without damage, and the most memorable, the upward-facing gull wings. Against the backdrop of boring sedans of the 70s, the SV1 looked like a ship from the future. But here's where the irony begins. A car built to be radiation safe turned out to be deadly for its company. First, the quality assembly. These cars were made in the small town of St. John on the internet, and the workers simply had no experience assembling other cars. The body panels were often crookedly fitted, the paint on the acrylic surface quickly faded, the hydraulically operated doors sometimes simply refused to open. Imagine, summer, heat, you are in a closed salon with a roof wing. The door is stuck. Yes, there were cases when the holders literally locked themselves in their Bricklins until their friends rescued them. Second, the engine. In the early years, they installed an AMC V8, later a Ford engine, but it did not give any sporty delight. The car weighed more than 1.5 tons, and with all its futuristic appearance, it started up slower than some family sedans. And most importantly, the price. In 1974, the Bricklin SV1 cost about $7,500, which was very expensive for an unknown brand. People simply did not want to risk this automotive experiment. Malcolm Bricklin, by the way, returned the millions of dollars that the Canadian government allocated for production, but the demand was so low that the project was closed in 1976. In total, they managed to assemble about 2,900 cars. And here's the paradox. Today, years later, the Bricklin SV1 has become a collector's rarity. But at the time, he came up with how even the best ideas can drown in production and financing problems. So the Bricklin SV1 is a car that wanted to change the world, but became one of the most striking failures of the 70s. Number 8. 1973 Pontiac Grand Am. In the early 70s, the U.S. car market was at a turning point. Muscle cars were losing popularity due to the 1973 oil crisis, insurance rates, and new environmental regulations. People wanted something fresh, a car that combined comfort, prestige, and sportiness. Pontiac saw an opportunity and in 1973 introduced the Grand Am, a car that was supposed to invent the sporty dynamics of the GTO with the comfort of a Grand Prix seat. Even the name was invented as a hybrid, Grand from the luxury segment and Am from American, as opposed to Grand Touring in Europe. In the 1973 advertising brochures, the Grand Am looked like the perfect solution for those tired of compromise. A long hood, a graceful roof, a wide grille with the signature Pontiac nose, and even bumpers made of soft polyurethane Endura, painted in the body color. And everything looked European inside. Wood inserts, a sports steering wheel, bucket seats, and a dashboard turned towards the driver, like in BMW. But the reality turned out to be more complicated. First of all, 1973 was the best time for the premiere of the sporty President sedan. The oil crisis drove up gasoline prices, and people began to look at economical small cars. The Grand Am, with its massive body and 6.6-liter V8, turned out to be a gluttonous monster, on average 10–12 miles per gallon. Secondly, despite the sporty image, the engines under the hood were often not the most powerful. Yes, 400 or 455 cubic inches of V8 were available, but the basic configurations were equipped with a 170 horsepower engine, which, with a weight of almost 2 tons, did not provide explosive dynamics. The car was more of a fast cruiser than a real sports sedan. Thirdly, the build quality of those years left much to be desired. Due to new safety and protection requirements, the bodies became heavier and the materials of the cars became cheaper. Many owners complained about creaking in the cabin, problems with the electrics, and quickly rusting bodies, especially in the northern states. But, perhaps most importantly, Pontiac simply did not fit the mood of the era. Buyers who wanted comfort took Cadillac or Oldsmobile. Those who loved sportiness went to the Camaro or Corvette. The Grand Am found itself in a strange niche that few were looking for. Sales were far from expected. About 43,000 cars were produced in the first year, and the model lasted until 1975, when it was quietly discontinued by the mid-70s. Today, the 1973 Pontiac Grand Am is perceived as a curious experiment. A car that wanted to be both luxurious and luxurious, but ended up symbolizing that the 70s were a difficult time for the auto industry president. It looks cool, it's rare, but at the time it just couldn't convince buyers what they really wanted. Number 7. 1974 Ford Mustang II. When Ford released the first Mustang in 1964, it literally blew up the market. It was a dream car. Aggressive style, powerful engines, affordable price. Mustang became a symbol of American youth and freedom. But exactly 10 years later, in 1974, something strange happened. Mustang II was born, a model that still causes controversy and wry grins among car enthusiasts. Why? Because it was the complete opposite of the first Mustang. Let's figure out what went wrong. First, you need to understand the context. These were hard times. The oil crisis of 1973 literally blew up gas prices. Huge muscle cars with gluttonous V8s turned out to be unnecessary for most buyers. People began to look for compact, fuel-efficient cars. Ford realized that if the Mustang did not become smaller and more fuel-efficient, it would simply stop selling. This is how the Mustang II appeared. It was built on the platform of the Ford Pinto. Yes, that very compact sedan famous for its explosive tanks. The car became shorter, narrower, and lighter. Design? Instead of aggressive, strong lines, a more modest, even European look. It was no longer a predator, but a tamed pony. But the main blow to the reputation came from them. The basic version received a 2.3-liter four-cylinder engine with a capacity of only 88 horsepower. This sounds funny for a car that proudly bears the name Mustang. Even the top version with a 5.0-liter V8 produced only 140 horses, and that's in theory. Many owners joked that this car accelerates from 0 to 60 in eternity. Of course, the Mustang II had its advantages. It sold well, more than 385,000 cars in the first year. People appreciated it for its economy and compact size. In 1974, it even became the car of the year according to Motor Trend. But, as is often the case, high sales do not mean that the car gives a legend. Today, the Mustang II is considered one of the most boring and unattractive cars in the history of Mustang. It became a symbol of compromise when the iconic car lost its soul for the sake of survival in the market. The irony is that years later, it was the failure of the Mustang II that inspired Ford to return to aggressive design and power in subsequent generations. Many collectors even joke, if you have a Mustang II in your garage, it's either a big joke or you collect car failures. Number 6. 1971 Plymouth Cricket. Picture this. It's the early 1970s, and American car enthusiasts are still obsessed with the idea of muscle cars, powerful, loud, and provocative. But an oil crisis is developing on the horizon, and gas prices indicate that new environmental and safety regulations are beginning to squeeze manufacturers into a vice. At this point, Plymouth decides to take an unusual step and introduce a compact sedan that should appeal to budget buyers. And so, the 1971 Plymouth Cricket was born. From the very beginning, it all seemed like a good plan. Fuel crisis? Great! The Cricket is small, economical, with a simple four-cylinder engine. Need something affordable? It cost less than many competitors. Perfect! But everything went differently when it was replaced. The main trick is that the Cricket is not really a purely American development. This was a reworked version of the British Hillman Avenger, which Chrysler simply renamed and released in the US market under the Plymouth brand. The problem? The car was designed for European prices and climate, not for the harsh American conditions. Ultimately, the owner faced a lot of problems. The build quality left much to be desired. The paint quickly faded, the body suffered from corrosion, the engine was capricious and did not always want to start in cold weather. The chassis, although it passed on narrow British roads, turned out to be too fragile for American roads and long trips at high speeds. Add to this poor service and a shortage of spare parts. Plymouth dealers simply did not have experience working with this imported baby. Repairs could take several weeks, and sometimes owners would have to wait for parts to be delivered directly from England. In addition, according to representatives of the Mercam, the Cricket was slow. The four-cylinder engine produced only about 70 horsepower, and compared to the previous V8s from Plymouth, it seemed simply ridiculous. Acceleration to 60 miles per hour took more than 15 seconds, a real eternity by the standards of that time. As a result, the Cricket could not find its audience. Those who were looking for an economical and reliable car most often chose Japanese Toyota and Datsun, which were more developed and better adapted to international conditions. And those who loved Plymouth for its power and style did not distinguish at all why this little Brit was needed in the brand's lineup. Sales were so weak that already in 1973, Plymouth removed the Cricket from the market. The car began to be manufactured in a way that even a large automaker can miscalculate, trying to get into a new niche too quickly. Today, the Plymouth Cricket is almost forgotten, and those rare examples that have survived are perceived as a curious but unsuccessful experiment of the early 70s, an era when American auto companies were in a panic looking for an answer to the growing popularity of small foreign cars. and sometimes betting on the wrong horse. Number 5. 1972 Jensen Healey. A British roadster that was supposed to be a new word in the compact car segment. Its production is a compact and lightweight alternative to the heavier and more expensive Jensen cars that the company had previously produced. The main feature was supposed to be the innovative Lotus 907 engine, the world's first aluminum overhead engine in serial production. On paper, everything looked perfect. A solar motor, an attractive design, a sports suspension. However, the reality turned out to be much harsher. Immediately after being discharged, Jensen Healey encountered problems that could not be subsequently fixed. The most important one is the unreliability of the Lotus 907 engine. This engine, although a technical breakthrough, suffered from frequent breakdowns, cooling problems, and required very careful maintenance. For the buyer, this was a real disappointment. A sports car with constant breakdowns lost all meaning. Things were no better with the quality of assembly. Jensen was a small company, and the level of interior trim, quality materials, and fit of parts left much to be desired. The car, which claimed to be a high-class sports car, could not provide comfort and reliability. The suspension was too stiff for that time. The steering was not the most responsive. An additional blow was the oil crisis of 1973, which sharply reduced the demand for sports cars around the world. Strict environmental and sanitary standards made life difficult for manufacturers, forcing them to spend more money on refinement. Jensen Healey, by the way, did not have time to adapt. Its production ended after only 4 years, and the number of cars produced was not limited to 10,000. Thus, Jensen Healey went down in history as one of the most striking, but at the same time the most disastrous cars of the 70s. A magnificent look and a high-tech engine, but broken problems with reliability and a poor understanding of the market. This is a great example of how even brilliant ideas and beautiful cars can fail miserably due to technical limitations and bad timing. In the long run, simpler, more reliable, and cheaper sportsmen remained on the market, and they are the real stars of the corners. Number 4. 1976 Lotus Esprit. Created by the famous Italian designer Giorgetto Giugiaro from Italdesign. Esprit looked absolutely new and fresh, like a car from the future, which immediately became popular against the background of competitors. At the time of its release, it became one of the most daring and progressive sports cars of its time. Under the hood of the first version, S1, there was a 2.0-liter inline 4-cylinder turbocharged engine from Lotus, producing about 160 horsepower. For a car weighing about 1,000 kilograms, this was quite decent. Esprit promised to be a light, fast, and excellently controlled sports car, according to the philosophy of Lotus, maximum output with minimum weight. But despite all the brightness of the appearance and technology, Esprit S1 faced a number of problems, due to which the car never became truly successful in the mass segment. Firstly, there were serious questions about the reliability of the engine. The turbocharged 4-cylinder engine required very careful handling, frequent maintenance, and was prone to overheating and shutting down under heavy use. Owners often complained about problems with pistons, gaskets, and the cooling system. Secondly, the build quality left much to be desired. In those years, Lotus was a small company with limited resources, and many Esprit cars left the factory with imperfections, loose body gaps, electronic problems, and poor interior trim. This hit the car's reputation hard. The third reason is the price. The Esprit was positioned as an exclusive sports car, and its price was quite high, especially compared to some, such as the Porsche 911, which had already earned wide recognition for its reliability and balance. Many potential buyers were not prepared to pay more for a car that could fail at the most inopportune moment. Add to this the 70s, a period of oil crisis, rising petrol prices, and stricter environmental standards, and you will understand why even such a spectacular and advanced sports car as the Lotus Esprit S1 could not achieve commercial success. The production of the first series lasted from 1976 to 1978, and only about 10,000 cars were produced. But it is worth noting that it was the Lotus Esprit S1 that laid the foundation for the world's leading models, which over time corrected many problems and became an icon among modern cars. Now, the first series Esprit is a collector's item and a source of pride for Lotus fans, despite all its teething problems. In summary, the Lotus Esprit S1 is a classic example of a car that impressed with its design and ideas but faced quality and market problems, which is why it did not immediately achieve its full capabilities. Nevertheless, its contribution to the history of sports and car design in the 70s is undeniable. Number 3. 1974 AMC Matador Coupe. A car that stood out for its brilliant ideas and ambitions, but failed to win the hearts of the public, giving way to competitors and becoming one of the biggest failures of its time. AMC, or American Motors Corporation, in the 70s was a small but ambitious company that considered managing the competition of the market giants Ford, Chevrolet, Dodge, and others. The Matador Coupe, released in 1974, was an experimental model of AMC, offering unique things and additions in the mid-size coupe segment. In terms of design, the Matador Coupe was bold and even a little eccentric. A bright roofline, a slanted rear window, and characteristic rear pedals on the body distinguished it from the gray mass of typical American cars of those years. The Matador's exterior was aggressive and modern, as if it was created for young people who wanted to be promoted. Under the hood, there could be a 3.8-liter inline six-cylinder engine or a more powerful 5.0-liter V8. This was the reason for American cars of that time. The power and dynamics of the Matador were quite competitive, especially with the V8, which made the car attraction for lovers of noble drive. But despite all these advantages, the AMC Matador Coupe faced serious problems that prevented it from becoming popular and successful. Firstly, the quality of assembly and finishing materials left much to be desired. At that time, AMC did not compare itself with larger players in terms of production, and the Matador often suffered from defects and shortcomings. Secondly, the car's handling and suspension were quite mediocre. Despite its powerful engines, the Matador felt heavy and not very responsive on the road, which discouraged drivers accustomed to more open muscle cars. In addition, in the mid-70s, the market was changing. Emission standards were tightened, fuel prices rose after the oil crisis, and demand for large, gluttonous coupes fell sharply. The Matador found itself between two fires: too heavy and gluttonous for budget buyers, not prestigious and sporty enough for those looking for a thrill. As a result, the AMC Matador Coupe could not compete with the more popular Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro, and Dodge Challenger models. Its production lasted only from 1974 to 1978, and during this time, relatively few cars were sold, and the Matador itself was quickly forgotten. Interestingly, today, the AMC Matador Coupe attracts the attention of collectors, especially with its unusual design and nostalgic atmosphere of the 70s. But at the time, it was, without a doubt, one of those bright but failed projects that never found its buyer. That is why the AMC Matador Coupe deserves a place in our list of 12 amazing cars of the 70s that, despite their potential and design, lost on the market and remained in the shadow of more successful competitors. Number 2. 1971 Buick Riviera. This is a representative of the American class of personal luxury cars. That is, luxury cars focused on comfort and status, but at the same time with a bright, individual design. The Riviera model appeared in 1963 and quickly gained popularity due to its smooth and fiery silhouette. However, the 1971 version is the beginning of the end of the classic Riviera in the form that the public loved. The car moved to a GM platform with larger dimensions, and the design became heavier and more massive. Instead of graceful lines, we got a bulky body with a more angular and less graceful front end, and the roof acquired a new, less harmonious profile. Under the hood was a large V8 engine with a volume of 7.5 liters, 455 cubic inches, which produced about 370 horsepower. Serious power for that time. But here are the problems with driving performance. The 1971 Riviera became heavy, almost 2 tons, and this noticeably affected the handling and dynamics. The car became clumsy and less comfortable to drive, especially compared to modern versions. Another important factor, in the 70s, the situation on the luxury car market changed. Gasoline prices rose, emission standards became stricter, and more buyers began to switch to more economical and practical models. The Buick Riviera with its gluttonous engine and large dimensions stopped working, requiring a new one. In addition, the build quality and electronics on the 1971 Riviera left much to be desired. Many owners complained about frequent breakdowns, electronics, problems with the cooling system, and suspension. All this reduced customer loyalty and had negative reviews. As a result, despite its status and ambitions to become the star of a personal sought-after car, the 1971 Riviera could not stay at the top. Its sales went down, and the model gradually evolved, giving way to more modern and contemporary competitors. Nevertheless, the 1971 Riviera remains a symbol of the 70s. Its Chinese engine, large dimensions, and stylish, albeit bulky design reflect the era when the American auto industry was trying to balance luxury and economy. So, the 1971 Buick Riviera deserves its place in our list of 12 amazing but failed cars of the 70s. Ambitious, spectacular, and memorable, but failed to find their place in the market in the hardware era. Number 1. 1975 Chrysler Cordoba. In the early 70s, as a response to the growing demand for personal luxury cars, that is, cars with modern production, rich equipment and comfort, but not necessarily with top sports characteristics, Cordoba was supposed to attract buyers who preferred the crowd but were not ready to pay for full-size limousines. The Cordoba design is a classic individual coupe with a long hood, wide radiator grille, and expressive body lines. At first glance, the car looks impressive and bright, with characteristic chrome elements and a rich interior trim, where high-quality materials and attention to detail are used. Under the hood, the Cordoba usually had a tall V8 with a volume of 5.9 liters, which produced about 245 horsepower, quite decent for comfortable cruising and dynamic acceleration. The car was quite heavy, about 1.7 tons, but thanks to this, it felt stable and solid. However, despite its external attractiveness and external engine, the 1975 Chrysler Cordoba faced several problems that prevented it from becoming a bestseller. First, the price. The Cordoba was higher than many competitors, but at the same time, it did not offer outstanding reliability or technical innovations to justify this price. Second, the build quality and finish left much to be desired. Many owners complained about problems with electronics, suspension, and body corrosion. In the 70s, American automakers often suffered from such shortcomings, and Chrysler was no exception. In addition, the economic situation in the 70s, rising gas prices and stricter environmental standards, hit cars with a V8 hard. Buyers began to look for more economical and practical options, and the Cordoba turned out to be too gluttonous and heavy for the new reality. Another important reason is competition. While many automakers offered more modern, reliable, and comfortable personal coupes, the Chrysler Cordoba was perceived as an outdated and too conservative model. As a result, the 1975 Cordoba became a symbol of the fact that even beautiful and powerful cars can fail if they do not adjust to changing markets and customer expectations. It continued until the early 80s, but the success that was expected never came. Today, the Chrysler Cordoba is a rare and interesting car that attracts the attention of collectors, for example, from the era of personal coupes of the 70s. But its history is a lesson in the importance of not only beautiful looks and a powerful engine, but also taking into account the market, quality, and reality.